dive into the real business. I want to remind you of the geography of this college for those who were not in when I gave a tour of the college. When you get out, turn to your right, you won't miss the telephone booths. As we start now the official ceremony, I would like to request the Vice Chancellor of Makerere University to step up. Okay, again, change of program. Okay, I'll start by welcoming you all to this particular venue, and thank you for honoring our invite, which demonstrates the commitment you all have to interrogating how universities can effectively contribute to solving Africa's development problems. We do not take your participation for granted. We are here today as stakeholders with the responsibility to contribute to pathways for Africa's development. The theme for the symposium, which we already shared, is the role of universities in shaping national development. And we shall, the rest of today, be discussing the role of universities in responding to Africa's problems and development needs. This symposium, the first of its kind, is timely, and it is indeed exciting that Makerere University was chosen to be the host. It is history in the making, and this comes in at a time when Makerere University is starting the next journey into 100 years. The symposium reinforces the country's Vision 2020 that purposes to address the strategic bottlenecks that have constrained Uganda's socio-economic development. The NDP3, which seeks to see a transformed Ugandan society. Both these frameworks recognize the importance of research, which is one of the core mandates of each and every university here today. And research is key in achieving the green growth strategy. Ladies and gentlemen, the main objective of this symposium is to explore meaningful ways universities and institutions of higher learning can contribute to national development. And I want to expect that by the end of this symposium, we will have connected higher level decision makers with universities, academics, and researchers with the aim of shaping practical and attainable solutions for Africa's problems and development needs that can be integrated in university study syllabi. Secondly, we should, by the end of this symposium, have created a platform for accountability for institutions of higher learning, high-level decision makers, industry practitioners, development partners, youth leaders, to check on implementation of policy outcomes from the symposium. We also expect to have facilitated dialogue towards championing research-led agenda among universities and securing buy-in from government institutions, development partners, and donors. Lastly, we hope by the end of this symposium, we would have availed a network a networking platform that will create sustainable linkages and partnerships between high-level decision makers, donors, research, industrialists, and universities. The optimism I have is that all delegates at this symposium will begin a conversation that will shape the policy formulation and implementation agenda of Africa in a bid to respond to her society needs and problems. I now take this singular honor to invite the Vice Chancellor of Makerere University, Professor Barnabas Nawangwe, to address this congregation.
Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of Uganda, who is about to arrive, the Honorable Minister of State for Higher Education, Dr. Jesse Muyingo, the Chairperson of Makerere University Council, Mrs. Lona Magara, our keynote speaker for today, and the panelists, my colleagues, the Vice Chancellors from other universities and institutions, members of council and management, members of Senate, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I warmly welcome you all to this very important symposium, touching on a subject that is very fundamental to our future as a nation and as a university. In a special way, I welcome our chief guest back to her alma mater, and I thank her for honoring our invitation to officiate at this symposium. Ladies and gentlemen, today's symposium comes 3 years into the implementation of our 10-year strategic plan and about halfway into the implementation of the third National Development Plan. Our strategic plan seeks to position Makerere as the engine of growth of Uganda's economy. This is indeed a good time to pause and reflect on the progress we have made in as far as meeting our targets is concerned, and carry out the necessary adjustments to ensure that we stay on track. Due to the importance of this symposium, we have invited the Vice Chancellors of all the other public and private universities and other stakeholders, because we believe that it is the universities that are going to guide national development. We take cognizance that it is graduate students at Makerere. We take cognizance that it is graduate students under the mentorship of our staff that conduct research that contribute to the body of knowledge. We are intentional about conducting research that is responsive to challenges facing our society, with the view that this will help unlock the potential of Makerere to more substantively contribute to national development. Of course, we are all aware that all studies and statistics show that Africa still produces only 3% of knowledge in the world. We want to change this around, and we are doing this in a collaborative way with 18 other universities in Africa to enhance research as we collaborate with all the other universities, so that Africa's contribution to knowledge, which will directly contribute to the national development of the countries, is enhanced. I take this opportunity to thank the government for honoring its obligation to pay our academic staff competitive salaries and generously supporting our creative ecosystem through the 30 billion shillings annually allocated to the Makerere University Research and Innovations Fund. I equally applaud our development partners whose generous support has trained the majority of our PhDs over the last 20 years, as well as numbers of masters and postdocs. We at Makerere have taken a strategic decision to use some of the funding for Makerere to support our PhD students to conduct field work and write their theses, that address national transformation. Indeed, it is the PhD students that will lead the research that we think will transform this continent. And that's why we emphasize training more PhDs. As impactful as this is going to be, our ultimate wish is to see a scholarship or loan scheme dedicated to graduate students. And Honorable Minister, we have been talking about this for some time now. Why must we continue funding undergraduate programs when the whole world now knows that economies of countries are transformed much faster if you have a critical mass of PhDs and master's graduates? I think we repeat our call to the ministry to take this up. I believe that this is a matter of priority for our country to address the urgent need for us to come up with solutions for our national transformation. We are privileged to host Professor Vincent Anbogu, the Director General of the Institute of National Transformation in Nigeria, who will deliver the keynote address on the very important subject of national transformation. I thank you very much for accepting our invitation. I once again thank Her Excellency the President and the Honorable Minister and all of you, our guests, for honoring our invitations, and the panelists for accepting to discuss this important subject. And I wish you all fruitful deliberations. I would now like to, if you want to clap, you can clap. I now wish to request the University Secretary, Ms. Akiranda, to come and read the very much summarized CV of our keynote speaker, who will then deliver his speech.
Honorable Minister, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, allow me to adopt the protocol already elaborated by the Vice Chancellor. It's too many privileges for me, first, to be invited by my Vice Chancellor to set the profile of our speaker, and second, to introduce and later invite our distinguished keynote speaker. This morning, and I think in the early afternoon later, we will be privileged to listen to and interact with Professor Vincent Anbogu, who is Director General of the Institute of National Transformation International, headquartered in Lagos, Nigeria. Professor Anbogu obtained his bachelor's degree in chemistry in 1978 and master's degree in analytical chemistry in 1981, both from Indiana University of Pennsylvania in the United States. He completed his doctoral studies in analytical chemistry in 1986, so fast, at the University of Alabama, USA. He went ahead to teach analytical chemistry for over 20 years, from August 1980 as a graduate assistant to May 2004 at 4 different universities in the United States. And in 2006, he returned to Nigeria to devote full-time efforts towards the development of leaders with leadership and management competencies necessary for the transformation of Africa. And that's where the idea of the Institute for National Transformation starts to be birthed. He and his team established the Institute of National Transformation International in Lagos, Nigeria, in September 2007, for which he serves as Director General. The Institute focuses on developing no-excuse leadership of integrity and exceptional organizational skills from both the private and public sectors throughout Africa. The INT, please be careful, INT, different from ANT. We were joking about this with my colleagues this morning. Those who know, has training centers in Nigeria, Uganda, and Atlanta, USA, where it collaborates with Beulah Heights University. It also serves in Kenya, Rwanda, South Africa, Ivory Coast, and the United Kingdom. Professor Anigbogu, now to enter a bit into his mind, believes that sound, value-based education is central to reconstructing the mindset of Africans and people of African descent towards integrity, leadership, and quality management, which is required for the transformation of their organizations, like Makerere University, communities, and nations. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me to enjoy the privilege to welcome Professor Vincent Anigbogu.
Good morning, everyone. I hope it's still morning, or I'm not staying in Nigerian time. Is that correct? Excellent. Secretary, thank you so much for that generous introduction. After listening to you, and then I'm having to be the one to come up, I was wondering who you were talking about. First, I want to appreciate His Excellency, the President, who will be represented by the Vice President, Her Excellency Jessica Alupo. I want to appreciate the First Lady, who is being represented by the Minister of State for Higher Education, Honorable J.C. Muyingo. I want to appreciate the Chairperson of Makerere University Council, Mrs. Lorna Magara, the chairpersons of the council from other universities that have been recognized, the Vice Chancellor, very amicable. You know, when I hear Vice Chancellors, you think they are tough people, but I'm seeing a very mild, sweet man. All the Vice Chancellors present, members of the Makerere University Council, and other council members from other universities, the members of the Makerere University Management, invited guests, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to recognize my wife. We've been married for 30 years, going to 31, Mrs. Peggy Anigbogu. People see us all the time and they wonder, is that your girlfriend? I said yes. I've been asked to speak for about 40 minutes on the topic, the role of universities in responding to Africa's problem and developing needs. Let me start by saying that in 2008, we started the Institute for National Transformation in Uganda. And that commenced after I had met with His Excellency and shared with him a curriculum that we had developed. And I will speak more on that. And I must say that to date, in Uganda alone, we have trained close to 1,000 people in the INT curriculum. And some of them are actually seated here. The chairperson, Lady Makerere has gone through the institute, and I see another INT alumni just walked in, Lady Dorothy. So INT has really, should I say, raised some very significant leaders that are occupying prominent positions, including the Honorable Minister for STI, who may be joining us. So I'm not here to just give you a theory of national transformation. I'm here to share with you what a chemist that got tired of playing with molecules, not that there's nothing wrong with molecules. When our continent is sinking, I'm a US citizen. I could have stayed there and have a good life. But in 2004, I dropped all of that and came back to Africa to see what we can do to change the story of our continent. I may not necessarily read everything I've written, but I hope I can communicate to you and I, especially we, the elites of Africa, that we need to rise up out of our comfort zone and take full responsibility for changing Africa. If we don't do that, Africa is on the brink. If I don't say anything else today, may I communicate that. The days of academic comfort is over. Either we survive through innovation and creativity, or we disappear into oblivion. Now, introduction. Tertiary education is changing globally in a fundamental way, moving from the medieval era or the first generation university model to the Humboldt or the second generation era, and now into the modern third generation era as exemplified by Stanford University, MIT, the University of Cambridge, and so on and so forth. Even the Asian tigers are beginning to model the relevance of education in nation building. University education has been forced through these changes, both in structure and functionality, to remain relevant and competitive. And by the way, congratulations on your 100-year anniversary. That's a major milestone. African education system must undertake pragmatic and issues-relevant reformation to prepare a whole new breed of Africans who can address emerging threats as well as emerging opportunities. If we don't prepare them deliberately today, not only will we be overrun by emerging threats, but we will not harness and maximize the emerging opportunities. Let me talk a bit about the education in the medieval era or the first generation university. When Christianity was adopted by European nations in the Middle Ages, schools were started in which all lectures were given in Latin. Hence, they were called Latin schools. These schools were often located near an important church or monastery, and the focus was on the preservation of sacred body of letters and sciences, antiquities from the era of barbarism. These schools eventually became the forerunners of the first universities, as individual lecturers were given licenses by the city magistrates and the church authorities to give public lectures, hence the popularity of public lectures. Pierre Abelard, who lived from 1079 to 1142, was one such public lecturer who is seen today as the ancestor of the University of Paris, which was established in the 1200. His method of instruction for science, theology, and liberal arts were through oratory, argumentation, rationalism, promotion of the sovereignty of the dialectics. These approaches remain the model which the future university was to follow. Abelard became the soul of scholastic philosophy that lasted 5 centuries up to and beyond the Renaissance period. The oldest university in the world is actually University of Al-Qaroun in Morocco, founded between 1857 and 1859 AD. However, the oldest university that modeled Abelard's method was established in Bologna, Italy, in 1088. The University of Bologna was followed by University of Paris, then Oxford, then Cambridge, Arezzo University in Italy, Palencia in Spain, Padua in Italy, and Napoli. At the end of the 13th century, there were about 20 universities, and by the 15th century, another 25 were established, including the first German university, the University of Prague. The key characteristics of the first generation universities, and please pay attention, includes focus on learning for the sake of learning, just to acquire new knowledge. There was no emphasis on knowledge conversion. One of the things that shocked me when I came back to Nigeria was when I meet professors, the first thing they want to tell me is where they have given lectures. I have lectured here. I have lectured. American University trained me to be pragmatic, to be practical. And then I said to them, all these lectures, distinguished lectures, what products and services came out of them? What did you do with them? The teacher is seen as an expert who uses basic research to gain understanding of aspects of life. The first generation had great influence in all matters of life during their era. They intervened in politics, and they were confident as well as critics of loyalties, pressing them to perfection and educating future princes of church and state alike. However, because they existed in an era when the only question was how to preserve the deposit of traditional beliefs and bring discipline into the church and political affairs in times of great turbulence, the first generation universities were not armed for the conquest of science. They commented, they discussed, but they applied nothing. And it's amazing how many African universities still model this first generation university, where the wealth of Africa are still buried in our libraries, in theses and dissertations. I want to commend the librarian. Please, it's time to dig those things out and convert them to products and services that will help our nation. Let me talk about the second generation university. The 15th century ushered in a new and disruptive era with the fall of Constantinople in 1453. Renaissance and humanism, which emphasize human dignity, freedom, and the value of the individual, were becoming popular. In the 16th century, great revisions on the foundations of theology emerged, led by people like Martin Luther, John Calvin, and many others. In the 17th century and 18th century, university conversations were greatly influenced by the emergence of eminent mathematicians such as Copernicus, Remius, Galileo, Descartes, and Huygens. Emphasis shifted to exact observations about nature. With the publications of Boyle, Newton, and others, the experimental method formed the basis for scientific work that complemented reasoning. These led to establishment of applied sciences such as engineering, forestry, and veterinary sciences, and in the establishment of special schools outside the university to house them. With this, the influence of the church over universities started to decline. Polytechnics and military sciences emerged. Even religious dissidents created their own universities, such as the University of Leiden in Germany. After a lengthy struggle, the exact sciences were finally recognized as disciplines taught in universities. Specialized chairs and institutes remained outside the university environment before true faculties of science were founded by the end of the 19th century. Unlike the Middle Age first-generation universities, the second-generation universities were using objective, systematic, and reproducible experimentation methods and transparent argumentation to reach conclusions. The University of Berlin, founded by Wilhelm von Humboldt, which was later named after him, represented one of the first shifts towards the Enlightenment universities. Humboldt persuaded the king of Persia to establish a university based on the liberal ideas of the philosopher Schleiermacher, who said the function of the university was not to pass on recognized and directly usable knowledge, such as the schools and the colleges did, but rather to demonstrate how this knowledge is discovered in order to stimulate the idea of science in the minds of the students, to encourage them to take account of the fundamental laws of science in all their thinking. With this new approach to pedagogy, the first generation model appeared after the French Revolution started to fade away. And by 1950, the number of the second generation universities were now over 200, with over 6,000 students and 32,000 professors. The Humboldt University model focused on research carried out according to the modern methods of rationality, experimentation, argumentation, transparency, allowing for verification, expansion, and authentication of results by external reviewers. Do we have? Okay, what do I do? Do I stand here or do I sit Okay, we're going to pause for the entrance of the Vice President. Shall we stand?
Join me in welcoming none other than the Vice President of the Republic of Uganda, the retired Right Lieutenant Major Retired Her Excellency Jessica Alupo. And may we have the anthems now?
May God uphold thee. We lay our future in thy hand. United, free for liberty, together we'll always stand. O Uganda, the land of freedom, our love and labor we give, and with neighbors all at our country's calling, peace and friendship we live. O Uganda, the land that feeds us, by sun and fertile soils grown. For our own dear land, we shall always stand the pile of Africa's crown. Mungu twaomba uilinde Jumuiya Afrika Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu. Makerere, Makerere, we build for the future, the great Makerere. Great, great and mighty, the walls around thee. Great, great and mighty, the gates beside thee. Great, great and mighty, the walls around thee. Great, great and mighty, the gates beside thee. From east and west, from north and south, all voices singing, arise, Makerere. Rise up and rise, high up and high. All voices singing, arise, Makerere. Makerere, Makerere. We build for the future, the great Makerere. Great, great and mighty, the walls around thee. Great, great and mighty, the gates beside thee. Great, great and mighty, the walls around thee. great, great and mighty the gates beside thee.
Makerere!
Oi!
Makerere!
Oi!
Ra, ra, cha, cha.
Her Excellency, the Vice President of Uganda. Where we'll be discussing the role of universities in responding to Africa's problems and development needs. You found us already started. Kindly take your seat so that we continue with the keynote address, which was triggering the changes in the way we do things and also our mindsets to be able to focusing on how we can transform Africa. Over to you, Professor Vincent.
Thank you so much. You're welcome, Your Excellency, the Vice President. As we are discussing the journey of education, and also we're trying to show why factors, historical factors, have led to why and how universities do business. So we're discussing the era of the second generation university, modeled by the Humboldt University, which focuses on research carried out according to the modern methods of rationality, experimentation, augmentation, and transparency, allowing for verification, expansion, and authentication of results by external reviewers, and published in specialized journals or books that could be obtained by anyone. Education then became integrated with research, allowing students and assistants to share increasing responsibilities. Instead of this expert that stands and lectures and everybody watches, we're now moving into an era where there's a participatory learning. And by the way, I think this is probably what Makerere University is modeling today. Universities then became organized into monodisciplines or disciplinary faculties. For example, the natural philosophy in the first education model became broken up into mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, economics, and social sciences, while theology, medicine, and law remained intact as a unit. Now, another trend that emerged is the nationalization of universities in the 19th century, which made universities begin to teach in their native languages. For example, Germany. And as a result, universities became the pride of their nations, especially with the introduction of the Nobel Prize in the early 1900s, which made clear where the leading institutions of thought were located. These universities faced very little competition from each other, especially for students, as they drew their students from their neighborhoods. German universities became popular and became the destination of higher educations for nationals from many nations. In fact, the German language became the language of science and of international journals. I remembered doing my PhD in the US, I was required to take 4 semesters of German. And today, I can't remember any of it. I wish I had taken Swahili, you know. Anyway, that's another discussion. Now, these universities faced little competition from each other for students as they drew them from their neighborhood. Now, I talked about German becoming the language of science and international journals. Funding was principally through national budget and at the goodwill of the autocratic kings of the 19th century and later. And of course, today, they're being funded by political parties. The Enlightenment era taught that education should have the highest priority as a tool for national and individual development and well-being. Bent on encouraging the lower income groups to participate in education, government kept tuition low, and this resulted in ever-increasing student population, but decreasing percentage of contribution of tuition to the national budget. So the government has to keep coughing more and more money for ever-increasing and growing university population. It resulted in two trends, which will eventually lead to crisis of sustainability. One is funding the universities because they are non-growing, building infrastructure, and sustaining them. To address the diminishing education budget and increasing running costs due to increasing student population, universities started looking for ways to generate revenue. These included entering into contracts with industries for research, especially in science and technology. Prior to this, there has been a sharp divide between universities and industries. The great inventors of that era, the second generation era, such as James Watt, Thomas Edison, Graham Bell, Henry Ford, George Eastman, they operated outside the shores of universities, although universities benefited to some extent from their work. So although the second generation university model has brought unprecedented benefits to society for over 2 centuries, it is failing to provide the intellectual and the creative environment that is required to improve the poor economic conditions of their nations. A university like Makerere, with the reputation you have in East Africa, should be this STI hub of East Africa. So I ask you, with the reputation you have by name, does it equal your impact in East African economy? Does it equal it? You have produced presidents, vice presidents, name them. Few of these second generation universities are not international centers of excellence. Why? Because the basis for evaluation and promotion are emphasized teaching, basic research, and community service. So if I just do research and publish, I'm okay. I don't have to take responsibility for the conversion of that knowledge towards social impact. I'm not being evaluated for that. So why should I pursue it if I'm not incentivized? They have created very little incentive or reward for increase in commercialization or exploitation of know-how. As a result, the second generation university are now giving way to the new model, the third education university. What is the third education university? Education for social change. No longer seeking knowledge for the sake of knowledge, just to publish, to say I have published 300 papers. The question becomes, of those ideas that you have generated, how many of them have been converted to impact the society? Until we transition to that, our people will continue to suffer. We'll continue to rely on outsiders to feed us when all the resources we need to develop Africa are here. Let me talk about Cambridge University. The town of Cambridgeshire was one of the poorest countries in the United Kingdom. Today, it is the second richest, adding nearly £3 billion a year to UK economy. What happened? Thanks to a strong interaction between the University of Cambridge with Cambridgeshire. University of Cambridge itself has subjected itself to modernization journey that has lasted for 30 years, aimed at maintaining its image as a global top-ranking university. The transformation of both the university and the community together is what's called the Cambridge phenomenon. There will be a Kampala phenomenon. And that must be the story of the second century of Makerere University, from a big name to a big impact. I hope you still love me because I love you. Similar developments have occurred at MIT. And of course, we know about Stanford and Silicon Valley. Conversion of knowledge generated in a university to create another economic environment that has impacted the nation. It is doable. It can be done. In all these cases, there are three interacting developments that led to the transformation of these communities. Number one, development of a community of high-tech enterprises. Number two, modernization of the university to structure it and finance it so that it can become a leading-edge science, technology, innovation research center. It will require a major shift from the second-generation model that we are practicing. Number three, developing techno-starters, facilities supported by the university, government, and business, angels, and venture capitals, coming together to find a way to fund good ideas so that they can be marketed. In case of University of Cambridge, there were emergence of clusters of high-tech industry, about 370 of them by 1987, stemming from spin-out research activities of the university. Entrepreneurs became drawn to the scientific and increasing dynamic environment created in the university. What we call an innovative and entrepreneurial ecosystem was created, and people became attracted to it. By 2009, over 3,000 high-tech industrial clusters have been created in Cambridgeshire. 3,000. Providing over 60,000 direct employment and over 120,000 indirect employment. Although only 10% of the industries were created directly from the university research, only 10%, but the rest were now attracted. Although Cambridge was and still is a typical research university with the largest number of Nobel Prize, 83 of them as of 2008. Its modernization journey, which started in 1990, began with intentional collaboration with industries. Intentionality is the game. Breaking away from tradition. As I begin to wind down, I'm not really saying that Makerere University has not done much. In fact, you've done a lot, as I said. In 2019, I came for a program, the launching of one of the INT offshoots. And I had the privilege of meeting Engineer Paul Musa Sisi. Does that name sound familiar? Musa Sisi. Does it sound familiar? Yes. And I visited Makerere here, went to the his department, and he shared with me where the concept of Kira Motors started. And then I drove with his team to Jinja, where the new Kira Center was being constructed. I'm sure by now it's probably have been completed. And today, Kira Motors, have they started production, or they should be at the verge of starting production? That idea, where did it come from? Please answer me. Makerere University. So what we're talking about is not that you're not familiar with it. Here's the question. When will the phenomenon of Kira Motors become the rule and not the exception? How do we now make it a regular culture of Makerere University? Who is the next Kira Motors? And I'm really challenging you, our faculty members. We're the key. At this time, I would like to pause and appreciate His Excellency, the President of Republic of Uganda, represented by the Vice President. I have had the privilege of spending quite a number of times with him. I've been to Chankwanzi at least 5 times. I know you probably remember me more. I even have a Uganda military uniform. Don't tell anybody. Before they arrest me. Now, what attracts me to His Excellency, there's never a time you meet him that he's not discussing innovation and creativity. The man is a professor. I hope we'll create a special chair position, VC, sir. We went to discuss with him the curriculum we had developed for training transformational leaders across Africa. This was back in 2007. I went in company of Dr. James Magara and Mrs. Allen Kajina. So he went through the curriculum, and he was very excited. He called, at that time, Captain Masiko, who is now a general. He was a captain then. And I said to him, this is my brother from Nigeria. He's a freedom fighter. At that point, I didn't know I was a freedom fighter. So, but he said, Prof, something is missing in this curriculum. So I say, Your Excellency, what it is? He said you must include a topic on the role of innovation in nation building. And I must be honest with you, we didn't think about it. And he gave me example of people like Bill Gates, whose innovative ideas have contributed to the GDP. Can you imagine 2 or 3 Bill Gates in Uganda? What impact would they have on your economy? Until today, we are teaching that topic, the role of innovation in national development. Why am I saying this? I am totally convinced that if Makerere University would deliberately shift in this direction, you have a leader that will support you, because that is his passion. I think he deserves a clap of hands. And I know how he has supported Kira Motors. And I'm sure he will support other great ideas. I'm quite aware of the creation of STI, Ministry of STI, headed by Honorable Dr. Monica Museleno, who, by the way, is a graduate of our institute. I'm very proud of her. Last year, I had the honor of holding a 1-week training for her leaders. We locked ourselves up in a room for 1 week. Nobody went anywhere. We wake up at 5 a.m. We don't go to bed until 11 p.m. every day for 5 days. That's the kind of ruggedness and determination that will be required to move to the next level. It's not a place of comfort. It's a place of hard work. It's a place of pushing ourselves beyond the usual boundaries until we find the solution. In closing, for Makerere University to move and make Kira Motors a regular, not a once in a while, it will require a major shift towards what I call education for sustainable development. In 2002, UN World Summit in Johannesburg emphasized quality education as an essential tool for achieving a more sustainable world. It outlined the reorientation that university curriculum must undergo if they are to be and continue to be relevant. Some of these include, number one, we must shift from monodisciplinary programs to multidisciplinary thinking. Innovative ideas are now buried across disciplines. I'm not saying we should abandon our basic research in chemistry and what. Fundamental research is still important. But really innovative ideas are emerging at the crossroads of disciplines. Number two, the universities must share the values and principles that underpin sustainable development. Let's train our students for the future. Let's catalog the challenges they will face in the future and train them to face that future with boldness. Let's not train them how we were trained. Let's train them for the future they will face. I know that Uganda recently passed a very controversial bill and is generating a lot of storm. It may lead to some aids being discontinued. Am I communicating? Here's my question. When they start cutting out those aids because of what you believe in, do you have the inner resolve to find a way or make a way? Or will you change your position so you can attract external funds? Are you ready to pay the price? Maybe cutting off those aids may be a blessing in disguise so that you may begin to look within. Don't tell them I said that, please. Number 3, our education must promote critical thinking and problem solving. Let's teach our students how to solve problems. I was so happy to hear the program that the VC had mentioned, training students in projects that will transform Uganda. That's where the emphasis should be. We have no need studying fish in Alaska. It gives us a nice PhD dissertation. But VC, it doesn't solve our problem. Let's stop looking for funds that will help us invest our intellectual mind in things that do not matter to us. It's a waste of time. Number 4, we must employ a variety of educational methods, such as, when I was in school, I must confess, I didn't like English. That's why I still don't speak very well. You probably notice. But I love science. But what if they had used science to teach me English? Do you think I would have loved English? But they had me reading Jane Eyre. What is Jane Eyre? How many of you read Jane Eyre? You did? Wasn't it boring? The only people that will say no are people that love literature. I'm saying we can teach English in the context of any subject. Find what students are passionate about and use it to motivate them to tell a story. In that context, you can now correct, if you will, the grammar of that story and teach them better. And number 5, let's allow learners to participate in decision-making, learner-centered education. Yes, we are still experts, but let's stop telling them we are experts. Because when we tell them, they relax. They just come with their notebooks and pen and say, okay, expert, tell me everything. Let's get them involved. Let them participate in the thinking. And finally, let's begin to address local issues that are relevant to us, issues that can be commercialized. In conclusion, universities have become the cradle of new economic activities, thanks to the emergence of the third education universities, which are now focusing on education for social impact. What impact are you making? How are you changing the socio-economic conditions of your people? Why would our people graduate with all these degrees, but they can't find a job? Does it make sense? Yet the certificate says they have knowledge, but they don't know how to convert that knowledge and even create jobs for themselves. Since the third education generation model have incubated companies that not only fan out research contracts to universities, but also offer challenging jobs to graduate students, hence creating new different life to the already dynamic universities in the US, in UK, and even in Asia. Africa faces complexity of issues, both internally and externally. We must teach our students how to convert these emerging threats and how to address them so that we are not drowned and yet maximize our opportunities. Entrepreneurship is the spirit of today's global culture, and every student should live here with a spirit of entrepreneurship. If I can't get a job, I can create one. African universities must help Africa innovate her way out of our challenges. Let's not wish our challenges away. They will not go away. We must innovate around our challenges. This will happen if the government that are willing to invest more and more in such ideas that will create jobs. So, Madam Vice President, just as Musée has been doing, we must continue to find good ideas, support them, and let's be patient, because just because you funded a project this year does not mean it will produce profit tomorrow. We have to be patient for that project to mature. But government must be deliberate in finding and funding and creating ecosystems that will make for national development. Thank you so much for listening to me. May God bless you. May God bless the Republic of Uganda. And may God bless Africa. Thank you.
Professor, I have been requested that you stay behind a bit and we have a conversation on just 3 issues.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm not released yet, so.
Yes. Thank you very much, Professor Anigibogu, for that illuminating lecture. And I think we are ready to dive in. Now, there are 3 contestations that have been affecting many universities on the African continent. And one of them is the contestation between, on the role of the natural sciences, like physics, or shall I say chemistry, biology, medicine, agriculture, and the social sciences, political science, philosophy, and so on and so forth. Now, I want to let this a bit on your introductory remark, referring to yourself as a chemist who got tired of playing with molecules and came back to Africa. You started an institute which largely focused on leadership development, not focusing on promoting the work you were doing in chemistry, in the natural sciences. And the debate here is steered more towards saying that universities must focus on the natural sciences and pay less attention to the social sciences. Do you think in the spirit of promoting national transformation, we shouldn't be focusing on balancing the two?
Thank you for that question. I think it's an excellent question. The answer is we need both. We need both. Science is great, but science doesn't answer the question, what is the meaning of life? Science will never answer that. Science will tell you about molecules, about energy, how to manipulate energy. But energy that's not guided by moral principles become a destructive energy. Look at what's happening in Europe. Are you aware that we are at the verge of the Third World War, even as I speak right now? That's the use of science that has gone out of control, not moderated by social sciences. Why we must. So science tells us how things work, how to create a more efficient life. But science does not tell me who I am, why am I created, and what's the meaning I'm supposed to contribute to life. It is the social sciences that will answer that question. So a well-developed student, and I'm happy I started with chemistry, but I can tell you my social science knowledge is actually what guides my science today and helps me to contribute positively to the world. So students must be trained in both.
Thank you very much. Now, the second contestation relates on the issue of universities as social institutions with an obligation to community, to innovate, to train people, come up with products. But also these universities are organizations that employ people. And what we read about your profile is that you also believe on transformation of organizations. Now in several African countries, there are a lot of internal organizational problems in universities which has led to strikes of staff and sometimes closure of these universities, which interrupts their contribution to research and innovation. Issues of pay, issues of promotion, pipeline problems for faculty members, and very often these issues are not discussed enough in the context of how do you prepare and run an effective university for national transformation. What are your thoughts on those internal contestations in universities?
Let me say this, and with all due respect to my colleagues, because you have a PhD doesn't make you a leader. But many of us are totally ignorant of principles of leadership. You are promoted in the academic environment based on your expertise. So I'm a chemist. My area of research was atomic spectrometry. And I dabbled into separation science and so on. But that doesn't make me a leader. But the mistake we make in Africa and many societies that once you become a professor, they think you are a leader that can lead people. Leading people requires a whole new set of skills. First, you have to learn to lead yourself. You have to learn how to influence people. It's not to command people, to influence people. You have to know how to motivate people. Those are skills you have to go and learn. So with due respect to my vice chancellor and all the vice chancellors, much of what we do in Nigeria, we are training top university leaders on how to do leadership, how to lead people, you know? So I encourage, and I say this with humility, every chairperson, every principal, every dean, VC organize a leadership training for every one of them so that they can learn to lead. And because you don't know how to lead, it leads to crisis. Simple things that could be resolved with negotiation become exacerbated and become a big problem. So that's my prescription, is that we must learn leadership. Secondly, why research is important, the person that doing the research is a human being. His basic or her basic needs must be met. Whether you like it or not, employees of universities are customers. They are called internal customers. And only a satisfied customer will continue to remain in that relationship, true or false. When a customer, whether internal or external students, are not satisfied, they will not come back. Even if they stay not because they are committed, but they stay because they have to. Good leadership will resolve this. To know how to make people feel important, how to appreciate them, how to address their basic needs so that they can be comfortable to do what they love to do. I don't know if I answered that correctly.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes.
And lastly, to reflect a bit on your point that universities should now be thinking about products, about services from their innovation is. One of the main contestations coming out of that is how do we share in the benefits of those products between the innovator, the university, and given that many of these universities are public universities funded by the taxpayer, the government. Later we can discuss the story of Kila Motors and Makerere University. The Cambridge example you have, I think they've also had a contestation with some of the innovators.
Sure.
What does the university take? The failure to resolve this debate is limiting the incentives and motivation for people to burn the midnight oil to do innovation. What are your thoughts on that, too?
Well, obviously, once money is involved, there's going to be issues. So it is important to define those terms ab initio. You must make clear to everyone, you must have an intellectual property agreement. Normally, if you're employed by a university and you discover something in the university, I think, if I'm not correct, it's considered the university's intellectual property. Is that correct, my VC? I don't want to contradict the culture. However, the university must also negotiate, what do you give back to the people? If people are not incentivized, they will not do it. So I don't want to be specific, but I want to say all those must be negotiated, agreed upon. Let me also say this. Not everyone will be involved in this commercialization of idea. There are those that will still remain at the fundamental research level, and they are important. It's just knowing what people are passionate about, creating an environment that will help them to do their optimum, and setting up appropriate rewards so that those that are doing research will remain research. We need those fundamental ideas. But those who know how to convert ideas are also, an environment is created for them so that they can do what they love to do.
Thank you very much, Professor Nigibogu. Ladies and gentlemen, another round of applause.
Thank you.
Please. And now, in order also to save on time, let me take the honors and the privilege to invite the chairperson of Makerere University Council, who will in turn invite the Honorable Minister of Education and Sports, who will in turn invite Her Excellency, the Vice President. Madam Chairperson.
Thank you very much. The Vice President of the Republic of Uganda, Her Excellency Jessica Alupo, it's a privilege and great honor to have you today with us. The Minister of State for Higher Education, Honorable Jesse Muyingo, what a delight to have you with us today. The Executive Director of Kampala Capital City Authority, my sister, Mrs. Dorothy Kisaka, I almost called you doctor. You are a doctor. Thank you for hosting us in your smart city. The Vice Chair of the Council, Right Honorable Dan Kidega. The chairpersons and members of councils of public universities. Honorable Vice President, we have almost all the chairpersons of the public universities in Uganda here, and those not here have been represented. So this is a really distinguished audience. The Makerere University Council members present, the vice chancellors of other universities. We also have several vice chancellors and deputy vice chancellors from public universities and private universities here. The Vice Chancellor, Professor Barnabas Nawangwe, and the management team, members of University Senate, members of staff associations, the student fraternity, our keynote speaker and friend, Professor Vincent Anigbogu, and your dear wife, Peggy. Hasn't he done an incredible job stirring us up? Our distinguished panelists, we are going to have a panel discussion later on. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my remarks really have been overtaken by the presentation of the speaker, Professor Vincent Anigbogu, because he talked about transitioning universities from wherever they are, first or second generation, into the third generation universities.
and these are universities for social impact. And my remarks really were premised on that, where Makerere is, and it's a question I want to throw back to us as the academia. Where is Makerere University? Or where are our universities? Are we the first, second, or third generation university? And so I will just abridge them for now because we would like to hear from our chief guest. Makerere University is currently in transition. We are cognizant that the foundations of this great institution were laid at the expense of great resources and human effort, and therefore we too must carefully provide a secure and firm bedrock that those that come after us will continue to build upon. Makerere University has just come through a celebration of 100 years, and so now we are repositioning and restructuring for the next 100 years. And Professor has just challenged us. What structures, what infrastructures, what human resource are we producing or are we positioning ourselves to produce that will impact the next 100 years? The challenge is, are we going to continue being a knowledge hub, a place where knowledge is generated, or are we going to produce that human resource that will be a key driver in national transformation? And that is the big challenge that we live with today. Our blueprint must undertake and must reflect where we're going. A research-led university responding to national, regional, and global developmental challenges. Innovations in teaching and learning that respond to the changing environment. An engaged university with enhanced partnerships with industry, the community, and international institutions, and a professionally governed institution. That must be our blueprint. Now, to achieve this, and Professor has already given us the 5 points, I'll not go through them. Professor, you must have read my notes, or maybe I read yours, I'm not sure. But we have very similar discussion points. And so I'll not repeat that, but suffice it to say that we must come back to the drawing board. And I'm very pleased that heads of different universities are here today. I'd like to challenge us to come back to the drawing board and say, we have been given an opportunity to lead these incredible institutions that are generating knowledge. But what are we going to do with that? How are we going to posture those universities, this resource, incredible resource that we have, to be key drivers in national development? And so even for the chairs, the members of council present, I would like to challenge us. Let's come back to the drawing board. We are at very critical points in our nation, in the region, even as Africa. We can drive this change if we sit down and plan for the next so many years that are with us. How can universities become drivers of national transformation? So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the aspirations that we have, we are not only desirous of them, but must fully commit to investing the time and effort that will enable us transform or lead the transformation of our nations. Makerere, in particular, because of the privileged position that we are in, our history, our resource, the name Makerere on the continent, we must leverage that to play a leading role in Uganda's development agenda. And I must thank His Excellency the President, through you, Madam Vice President. He has given us incredible support in whatever we have placed before him regarding research and innovation. And through you, Honorable Minister, we thank our First Lady and Minister of Education and Sports, for her passion and dedication in ensuring that Makerere's unique needs continue to be advocated for and supported. And so we thank you for sparing your time with us. This is really a beginning of a discussion that I would like to see taken to the next step. Let's not fall into the trap of discussing and agreeing and writing these beautiful papers. Let's focus on implementation. It's going to take hard work, but we are here to do that work. We are committed to do that. And so thank you very much for all the time that you have given to us. And with this, it's my singular honor to invite the Honorable Minister of State for Higher Education, Honorable J.C. Muyingo, to invite our chief guest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rona. Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of Uganda, the Chairperson and members of Makerere University Council, the Vice Chancellor, Makerere University, staff, our keynote speaker and a friend of Uganda, together with your dear wife, Peggy, Mrs. Allow me to associate myself with the protocol as presented by the Chair of the University Council. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, everybody. Your Excellency, the Vice President, I want, first of all, I'm standing here to represent the First Lady and Minister of Education and Sports and deliver her message. Before I deliver her message, Your Excellency, allow me to welcome you very warmly to Makerere University, your university. And thank you for accepting to grace this very important symposium with your personal presence. Your Excellency, we don't take your presence here for granted. This confirms the love, the interest, and support you have for higher education, and I want to thank you, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, the First Lady and Minister of Education asked me to convey very warm and prayerful greetings to each and everybody attending this symposium. Please receive it. And she says she's happy that we are here this morning and afternoon to discuss critical role of universities in contributing to national transformation. This is a fundamental theme, especially as government seeks to concretize its agenda of a transformed Ugandan society from a peasant to a modern and prosperous country within 30 years. Of course, by the year 2040. To this end, the government is focusing on strengthening the science, technology, engineering, and innovation capacity to harness Uganda's rich resources. The critical areas of interest include oil and gas, tourism, minerals, ICT business, productive labor force, trade, water resources, industrialization, and agriculture. Universities such as Makerere University are at the heart of ensuring adequate provision and availability of the human resource in science, technology, engineering, and innovation. Recognizing our university's critical role, the government is committed to continuously supporting initiatives aligned with the national development priorities. In this regard, Makerere University Research and Innovations Fund and its annual Uganda shilling 30 billion budgetary allocation is expected to not only come up with phenomenal innovations, but also take the next step to commercialize these outputs into enterprises that provide employment for a growing population and advance government industrial agenda. I commend Makerere University for taking the next step by setting up Makerere University Innovation Hubs, This reflects that our partners are committed to supporting university initiatives that align with our national development agenda, which is itself aligned with the continental and global agendas. With a few years left to the completion of the third National Development Plan, that is 2024-2025, I call upon all universities and Makerere to take a keen interest in the implementation of interventions that have been prioritized to achieve its 6 objectives. And these are 6 objectives. Under objective number 1, strengthen capacity for development planning. I call upon universities to support the Ministry of Local Government and Public Service through collaboration to strengthen the planning and development function at the parish level and bring the delivery of services closer to our people. This is particularly significant as we implement the parish development model. Colleagues, under Objective 2, which is strengthen budgeting and resource mobilization, I urge universities to support the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, and the National Planning Authority's efforts to conduct a cost-benefit analysis of current tax exemptions and government subsidies. Governments must receive value for the money in all undertakings. Colleagues, under objective number 3, that is to strengthen the capacity for implementation to ensure a focus on results, the Ministry of Local Government will need the support of the academia to strengthen the implementation, monitoring, and reporting of local governments. This is more important than ever as the government moves to create wealth and employment and increase household income at parish level. Under objective number 4, which is strengthen coordination, monitoring, and reporting framework and systems, the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, together with the National Planning Authority, can greatly benefit from the expertise in universities to strengthen expenditure tracking, inspection, accountability on green growth. Environmental sustainability should be at the heart of all our economic activity for the sake of our children and grandchildren. Dear friends, under objective number 5, which is strengthen the capacity of the statistical system to generate data for national development, I urge universities to seek partnership with the Uganda Bureau of Statistics to harness new data sources, including big data, data science, blockchain technologies, geospatial technologies in statistical production, and so forth. Finally, under objective number 6, which is to strengthen the research and evaluation function to inform planning and plan implementation better, I urge all universities to actively participate in efforts by the National Planning Authority and other actors to develop the National Development Planning Agenda. As government continues to ensure that all our decisions are guided by research, I applaud efforts by Makerere University Council and of course its management in ensuring that Makerere plays an active role in contributing to the knowledge economy by gradually increasing enrollment of graduate students. As I conclude, I thank the University Council for setting the tone for Makerere's contribution to national development through the right policy environment. I equally thank the university management for ensuring that these good policies are implemented. Makerere's continuous improvement of the research and innovation output is only possible with the hard work and dedication of the staff and the students. I commend you all for your diligence and pray that God will bless you with wisdom and health to continue contributing to your beloved nation, country's prosperity. Once again, thank you very much for coming, and we look forward to enjoy and benefit from the outcomes of this symposium. Your Excellency, the Vice President, with those few remarks, I want to invite you to address your people. Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister, please take your seats. Sit. Honorable Minister of State for Higher Education, Honorable Chrysostom Muyingo, who is ably representing the Minister of Education and Sports, Mama Janet Kataha Museveni, the First Lady, the Chairperson of Makerere University Council, Mrs. Lorna Magara, and indeed your Vice Chairperson, the Right Honorable Dan Kidega, and all your members, the chairpersons of university councils from other universities, the Vice Chancellor of Makerere University, Professor Barnabas Nawangwe, and all the members of the management of Makerere University, other visiting Vice Chancellors or other invited Vice Chancellors from other universities present, distinguished speaker of the day, Professor Vincent, and your dear wife. I am fearing to pronounce the other name for obvious reasons. All invited guests and participants, ladies and gentlemen. I entered the room when the professor was saying that the meaning of education is not just about teaching, research, but it's about teaching, research, and community service. And I was also stimulated by the statement which he made by saying that it's not about producing volumes and volumes of publications, but how far those volumes have impacted on the grassroots. And I thought that I was also part of the people he was addressing, even if I found him in the middle of his presentation. At the question time, I also appreciated the message of the professor about how leadership is not about commanding but influencing people. And influencing people means that you make an impact on where they require your service most. But the most thrilling part, Professor, from your presentation also and response to the questions which were asked to me, was where you say that your social sciences are the ones which are driving your pure sciences. When you say that, you reminded me about a certain fundraising which I attended. And then there is a teacher who came and said, Your Excellency, I have a contribution of 500,000 Uganda shillings. But if I was a science teacher, I would have contributed $1 million. If that teacher was here, I am sure that statement would have been his statement of the day. But I am sure that all of you know that I have been sent here by His Excellency the President to deliver his message. So it is very easy because I have his message. But where it is difficult is that I cannot continue making the comments or jokes I've been making. I just have to read his message to you. And allow me first to convey his regards to all of you. He greeted you very sincerely. He gave me this communication, I think 10 days ago on phone, and said, you go there and interact with your professors. And he guided me on how to come here with a message which I have brought, and I'm going to read it to you now. When I think about the problems of Uganda and Africa, I first of all start with the pre-colonial times. How were our societies in the pre-colonial times organized? How were they organized politically and economically? It is good for the university education system to discover how those societies were organized. Once you know how they were organized, then you assess how they behaved when they faced challenges of external actors. The Europeans coming to Africa started with the fall of Constantinople to the Turks. Those of you who are Christians, you must have read the book of the Acts of the Apostles. You must have heard of a man called St. Paul, and that St. Paul was quite a traveler. He was traveling through a place called Asia Minor. However, if you go on the map now, you look for Asia Minor, it is not there. There is a new country called Turkey, and some of the areas which St. Paul was talking about, like Ephesus, Galatia, are in what is now Turkey, and other places are in Greece, like Corinth, Thessalonica, and so on. When the Turks captured Constantinople in 1453, they blocked the land route of trade from Europe to China, which had been established by a man called Marco Polo. If you remember that little story. That is when Europeans started looking for another way to China, looking for the sea route, and by 1472, they were around Sierra Leone. In 1482, a Portuguese man called Diego Cama was near Angola. By 1487, Bartholomew Diaz saw the Cape of Good Hope, and he said, there is now hope. The African continent was so big, going around it by water took long. In 1498, Vasco da Gama goes round the Cape and lands at Natal on Christmas Day. Natal in Latin means to be born. That is how Europeans came to Africa. And when Vasco da Gama goes around the Cape, he comes and attacks Mombasa, and he continues to India. Now, this sleepy Africa is now exposed to these new people, and to cut a long story short, by 1900, the whole of Africa had been conquered by these new people, except Ethiopia. Therefore, the university education system must find out whether this was good performance or bad performance by the society. The Africans and the way they were managed, in the process, the Africans lost a lot. You must have heard that recently, an African was the president of America. How did he get there? How did the black people get to all those places? The rumor I heard is that they were there as slaves. Actually, when the Europeans got to Sierra Leone in 1472, they started taking slaves, and that slave trading went on for a long time. You must have heard of a man called William Wilberforce, who came in 1822 to decampaign slavery. That means slavery had been going on for 350 years until this white man came and said, Ebisaja, to be mazeo, to be kwata, ngabadu, to koe. I am sure the professor from Nigeria has understood that very well. He started that movement, which ended up in the abolition of slavery, at least by those parliaments, and then soon it was replaced by colonialism. Therefore, the university education system must bring this one out clearly. You must talk about ancient history like Rome and so on. It is very important to know that history also, but specifically, find out how these societies were doing in that pre-colonial time up to 1900. From 1900 to independence, we now became colonies. What was the system of management here, especially for the economy? There we go from producing slaves who would go and produce cotton and sugarcane and many other things in America. Now we become producers of raw materials. But here in Africa, residentially, producing raw materials like cotton, coffee, cocoa, and so on. How did that system support our prosperity as Africans? The education system and the university education, for that matter, must be able to show this. Definitely, what you will find is that the raw materials production introduced Africans in a limited way to the money economy. Remember that much of the pre-colonial economy of Africa, even when we were being attacked, being taken as slaves, was mainly a non-money economy. Money was not so much developed. There were some attempts, the use of cowrie shells and so on, but it was not a fully functional money economy like the European one had become. It was a system based on mainly primitive homestead social self-sufficiency, where you would find the home would grow its own food, build their own house, like how I and Mzee Kaguta would do most of the things ourselves. We would make our own fence, okuzitira urugo, bring water from the well ourselves, get firewood from the bush ourselves, etc. There are people called the Makerere. I don't know whether you have heard of them. Do we have a Makerere here? They are wonderful people. They call it okukorera echida chonka, only working for the stomach. In English, they call it subsistence. Therefore, before colonialism, it was mainly subsistence. There was some exchange, but limited. With colonialism, you have some shallow penetration of money economy. I challenge you to look at the census of 1969. For instance, the one of 1958. I don't know if you have the records. You should find out the percentage of the homesteads which were in the money economy then. Remember, what we are looking for is prosperity for our people. You cannot get prosperity if you are working for the stomach only. O okukorera ekida chonka. The shallow penetration which came in by 1962 from the school system, our little economy here was being called an enclave economy, i.e., economy which is like an island, a small island of modernity, surrounded by a sea of backwardness, of okukorera echida chonka. I remember in the school system, they were characterizing it as the economy of the 3 C's and the 3 T's. The 3 C's were coffee, copper, and cotton. And the 3 T's were tobacco, tea, and tourism. The census of 1969 was showing that only 4% of the homesteads were in the money economy. The 3 C's and the 3 T's were affecting only 4%. You can check. By the sunset of colonialism, we had 2 problems. First of all, limited monetization of the economy. Just a small portion of the people being in the money economy, and the majority were outside the money economy. Secondly, even within the little money economy, it was the production of raw materials. There was very little or no manufacturing. Then for the case of Uganda, Idi Amin comes in, and the small island economy now collapses. Of the 3 C's and the 3 T's, copper goes back to 0. Cotton disappears. But coffee kept limping on. Tourism disappears. Tea shrinks from 23,000 kilograms to 3,000 kilograms per annum. By the time we came in as NRM, the tea plantations in Chamhunga were trees, very tall trees. Tobacco and coffee were the only ones limping. Of course, with peace and private sector-led growth, we have been able to restore the small island of modernity and to expand it. However, you find that when we are doing that, there is a tug of war because people don't know what is lacking. They talk vaguely about economic development. In my view, the correct thing would have been to expand the monetization of the economy so that the whole society goes to the money economy to produce for the stomach and also for the pocket. As I have been telling people, when you do that, you look for where you can participate in order to earn income, to feed yourself, but also to deal with non-food needs. Build a better house, have better clothes, have electricity in your house, have piped water, and have an easy system of transport rather than walking. Health, education, etc. In order to do that, where should I participate? You find that the sectors are 4. They are commercial agriculture, manufacturing or industry, services, and ICT. Therefore, at independence, what was lacking were 2 things. First, the full monetization of the economy so that you don't have a Makerere ekida chonka. In Luo, we say, teach me keken. The whole society should join the money economy, move from the pre-capitalist society to the economy of money. But secondly, go from producing raw materials to manufacturing, so that you add value to all our products and also go to other products of knowledge, go from raw materials to manufacturing, also modernize the other services. I remember in 1963, one day, Mzee Kaguta sent me with one other young man to get his cow from Kanoni and take it to Katebe, to walk it, Okufunya. You town people, you walk dogs. Me, I walk cows. We had money in our pockets, but there was nowhere to buy a cup of tea or even a soda. That time, there was nothing. The only way you would get support was okurarira, to sleep at somebody's house. Services were not there. When we walked up to Rubindi, I left my friend holding the bull. I went to a shop and said, "Can you sell us soda?" They asked me to first bring an empty bottle. But I was not working with empties. I requested to pay more money for the soda, but the man refused. He said, "You sit here and drink the soda, or bring an empty." I said, "If I sit down to drink a soda, the bull will run away." Hence, we had to walk all the way to Rutoma. That is where we spent the night. We had the money in our pockets, but we could not get a service on our way. There was a bit of tourism and hospitality for the foreigners, but these services were underdeveloped. What the system should have emphasized was to, first of all, monetize the whole economy, the whole society to be under money economy, then introduce manufacturing to go away from raw materials, because that is how countries don't develop. You can check on the internet the example of coffee. The global value of coffee is now $460 billion. But all the coffee producing countries are getting 25, in Africa, are getting 25 billion US dollars out of the 460 billion US dollars. And Africa is getting 2.5 billion US dollars out of that. Uganda takes only 800 million US dollars, and it is one of the biggest producers of coffee in Africa. Therefore, you wonder, how can this happen and people are not talking about it? We have professors of neocolonialism. Do we have a professor of economics here? Why are the professors not making enduro on this issue? How can this be? When you sell a kilo of coffee, I hear they pay these people $1.4. But if that kilo is processed and sold as finished coffee, I hear it is $53. How can this be? And you have got the university education system, and every day people wake up and go to work, and they come back and sleep. The following day, they go to work again and come back and sleep. What are you working for? How can you produce coffee like I am doing, and I am paid $1.4, and somebody else gets $53 for the same product? How can this be? We have got professors, ministers, permanent secretaries, etc. How can this happen? I have been at war fighting the education system, but I am also difficult to get rid of. I had a problem with the Bachiga. We have got very good iron ore there in Butogota, in Imuko, and Kabale. It is the best in the world, 70% pure. An Indian had come and got business and had been licensed to export unprocessed iron ore to India and have it processed in India. I said no. Kanungu District Council had even been given some little money. I saved the iron ore, Obutare, it will not go. The Indian was going to give them $47 per ton, and when you process it and make steel, at one time it was going to $900. And by now it is about $600. And all the jobs would go to Indians. I had to fight. Even the commissioners in the Ministry of Minerals. Forget about the Bachiga villagers. A commissioner with a university degree, even master's, or even PhD in neocolonialism, you can't believe it. How can this be? What sort of university education system can produce anybody who can stand this even for one afternoon? This university education system should answer questions of the grassroots man. That's why these economies are always coming up and collapsing, because sometimes when the raw material prices are high, they do well. For example, at one time, the kwacha of Zambia, for one kwacha, you would get $3. The kwacha was stronger than the dollar because the price of copper was very high. But then you see, this is the danger of raw materials. At some stage, there were a lot of copper wires being used in aeronautical engineering or industry and many other places. Now, at some stage, they developed new technology to use this in these planes. Instead of using copper wires, they were using something like digital signals or electronic. The price of copper collapsed, and Zambia almost collapsed with it. You can check what happened to the copper of Zambia. This is a problem when you depend on raw materials. When your raw materials is in high demand, you are all right. When it collapses because of science finding new methods and new materials, you collapse with it. Therefore, university education, even today, must emphasize the issue of manufacturing, and you must bring it out clearly. But also to expand the services so that, like today, if I was to walk from Rubindi, first of all, I would not even walk because walking cows is no longer there. Now, you put them on a lorry and drive them. But even if I was to walk, I would be getting services everywhere because the services have improved in many parts of these places. The hospitality, etc. Therefore, university education system must expose how Africa and other parts of the world, which are like us, can go from raw materials to what the NRM was calling an integrated, independent, and self-sustaining national economy when we came from the bush. Point number 5 of our 10-point program. However, another problem, and partly because of the reason for what I have been telling you about, is neocolonial social science. It is really miseducation of our people, the history. History is really taught in a wrong way. Misinformation, not even information. We call it history. Therefore, this neocolonial social science has been a very big problem. The history, the political science, the way they are taught. I don't know how they teach philosophy, but if you can learn from it because you can see the different thinking, you must have somebody to interpret it because some of it was progressive up to a point. When I say progressive, I mean rational. But for instance, if you get someone like Adam Smith, he comes and points out to you the mistakes of the earlier philosophers of the bullionist group. Those who believed that gold and silver were the wealth. You know that Adam Smith wrote a book in 1776 entitled The Source of the Wealth of Nations. This was a big issue in Europe from the Renaissance time. People didn't know where the wealth came from. Some were saying gold, that if you have gold, that is wealth. And that is how Spain and Portugal went to Latin America and killed all the Red Indians and stole all the gold and silver. But they ended up being the most backward countries in Europe. Therefore, that means that bullionism was not the right thing. It is Adam Smith who came and changed things. He gave a very good example. He said, look at me. I have just had breakfast. And at breakfast, I ate bread from the baker. I ate beef from the butcher. I drank a beer. I didn't know that the British drink beer at breakfast. I drank beer from the brewer. It is because these people loved me. Is it because these people loved me for me to sit here and they arrange my breakfast without me being there? And his answer was no. They didn't love me, but they loved themselves. And by loving themselves, they worked and I had breakfast here. He was highlighting the importance of the primitive, of the private initiative, private sector-led growth, and division of labor and exchange. Therefore, it was a very useful contribution. But then, there is something else which he didn't see, which later on became a problem. That is, how if you have got efficient production, which Adam Smith helped you produce and produce. But in the efficiency, you minimize costs. You try to minimize costs, and now in the minimization of costs, one of the costs is labor. If you keep underpaying workers for a long time, and your production is going up, then eventually you may come in a crisis of the capitalist system of 1929, when there was a crash of the capitalist system. What caused the crash? High production and no consumption because of purchasing power. The purchasing power of the society was not there. So therefore, if I produce and nobody buys, how will I continue producing? Hence, these philosophers, many of them made very useful contributions if it is interpreted well in the political science and in economics. Now, in the economics, you don't hear emphasis, for instance, on regional integration. In political science, you don't hear it. They are talking about tribes like Baganda, Basoga, Banyankole, etc. Talking about culture. What is this called? Sociology. But now, how can we organize ourselves to be prosperous. You don't hear any talk on regional integration. I don't know whether it is emphasized anywhere in these teachings. Certainly, when we were studying, I don't remember it being talked about. But if you don't solve the issue of market, you don't solve the issue of the one who buys what you produce. How will the producers be encouraged? Economics without talking about integration, political science without talking about regional integration. Are you an enemy? And you are producing young people with PhDs. PhD in what? In no integration? You have got PhD in economics. Did you learn about integration? Aha. Echo chirara. But if you didn't learn about integration, how will you support business? Because business means I produce and sell as much as possible. And the more I sell, the more profitable I become and expand. And once I expand, I create more jobs. You are talking about jobs. Emirimo tegiriwo. Finally, the attack on the identity, on the African identity. The attack on the African identity. The education system or university education must put confidence back into the African people. You find our girls with the Banyankole. The darker you are, the more beautiful you are. The Banyankole would say, Nairaguza ebinyansi. She is so black that when she sits on the grass itself becomes black. But now, because of the colonial thinking, blackness is frowned on. You find someone going to get acids to rub off the African color. You can't believe it. Do you see how beautiful Honorable Minister of Education is, Mama Janet? This is the original Ntungamo. This is the original Ntungamo indigenous product. But you find our children putting on dead people's hair, wigs, because they want to be like the white woman. That inferiority complex which has been put in the Africans is very dangerous. Therefore, these are my 5 points which I think you could look at. First and foremost, the pre-capitalist, pre-colonial system, the way it was and its consequences that led to our colonization and the slave trade. 2, the production of materials in the colonial times and the post-independent times, and therefore the need for change, which includes manufacturing. 3, expanding of the economy and expanding of the services sector, and then dealing with the neo-colonial social sciences, which I tried to go to Makerere to engage Dr. Kirumira. Was he called Dr. Kirumira? I came here in Makerere to engage them, but we didn't go far. Then the 5th one is the attack on the African identity. For me, I think these are the 5 big issues. Of course, I must add the 6th one. Don't neglect exposure. I heard some people saying, what is the use of studying European history? No, it is very important to study European history because when you know about the world, it is like a laboratory. You can trace how the world is and how society evolved. It is like the French Revolution of 1789. Very, very important. Which were the forces there? Then what happened afterwards? What happened before? So I should add that one. That what I am saying here should not mean that we should neglect the global picture, because it is very crucial. To somebody who is like me, I actually benefit from my big knowledge of European history. But my quarrel with my people here is, why don't you copy the good things that happened in Europe and bring them here? Why don't you? Do you know that England in 1400 was really a pre-capitalist society of France? But by the time you come to 1789, the society had metamorphosized. You remember that process in biology, the one of metamorphosis of the butterfly, from the egg to the caterpillar, to the pupa, and to the mature butterfly. Society also metamorphoses. The problem here is that ours is not metamorphosizing. A person is producing another person. We are perpetuating underdevelopment. Omunachalo okuzala omunachalo. But if you study European society, you will see that in the last 600 years, these European societies have metamorphosed, while we here have in a way retrogressed. Because we had blacksmiths, they are no longer here. Now until we came with the NRM, and these people, the Musasis and the Kabasas, now we are beginning to be able to make vehicles. But otherwise, we had reached a stage where we could not even make a hoe. You can imagine people who were making hoes had reached a stage where we were using Chillington hoes. Nenkumbi ali etulemie. We could no longer make hoes. We could no longer make a bikopo. Actually, in the colonial times, there was like a socio-economic regression. Therefore, in my opinion, the university education system should know that the human story, spanning 4.5 million years ago, since the evolution of the Homo sapien and the sapien, is both connected and varied. The human being with the 3 unique characteristics of a superior brain, bipedalism, and a hand that can hold tools, is the only animal that can adapt elements of nature to his needs in order to deal with hunger, disease, floods, drought, etc. Has been making progress using the primer of science and technology to improve his quality of life on Earth. The African original human being has taken part in all these inventions. The inventions of fire 1.5 million years ago, the invention of agriculture, the domestication of livestock, the invention of iron ore, or iron. It is only in the last 600 years that the African has missed the bus of history to his disadvantage. The invention of the gunpowder, the printing press, the steam engine, and stealing the anti-malarial quinine from the Indians in Latin America, that created a gap that resulted in the slave trade, colonialism, genocide, etc. and the metamorphosis of Europe and the stagnation and retrogression of Africa. We ought therefore to study the history of the world, including Europe, to understand how socio-economic metamorphosis took place, partly using the parasitism of slave trade and colonialism, although some European countries metamorphosed without parasitism. These are Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and Russia. Therefore, in my opinion, the education system or university education should have the 6 elements described above. These are: understand the strength and weakness of the pre-colonial African societies so as to understand why they were conquered by the rapacious foreigners. 2, understand the colonial intrusion after the mutation of the slave trade into colonialism and the creation of the enclave economies that confined themselves into production of raw materials. 3, understand the need for change, which includes manufacturing, expanding of the money economy, and expanding the services sector. 4, dealing with neo-colonial social sciences. 5, using the education system to instill confidence in the African people. And 6, study the history of the world, including Europe, to understand how socio-economic metamorphosis took place. I thank you all. The professor from Nigeria said that His Excellency is a professor. He is indeed a professor, and this is his message to you. And for us in politics, we cannot let such a professor go. That's why we are with him. That's why we are with him even in 2026. Thank you very much for your kind attention and indeed your patience.
Thank you very much, Her Excellency. That was a very insightful speech, and convey our regards to the President. We have now a moment of gifting. I'd request the Vice Chancellor to step up and recognize 2 persons. We'll start the recognition with none other than the keynote speaker of today.
Thank you very much, Professor Navanog. I'm really impressed by the amount of time the President put in this lecture. And Your Excellency, there is only, the President was using the local language for several times, but there is only one which you said, Professor Anigobu, Anigobu, understood, but I'm not sure that he understood. That idea where he was saying, he was basically saying, this Wilberforce just came to sympathize with us. And he said, you know, these chaps, we have harassed them all these years. We have enslaved them. I think let's leave them. Otherwise, the slave trade could have just gone on. That's what he was saying in that. But thank you very much, Your Excellency, for delivering that very inspiring speech. In my view, the President really broke down the keynote address that was given and gave examples to inspire us. And basically the message from both the keynote speaker and the President is we must do things differently. We should not pride in volumes of books like people did in the 18th century. But we should see that whatever we do every day here at the university has an impact on our society. That's when we shall truly be a modern 21st century university. Thank you very much for the message. High Excellency has visited us several times, but we have never had opportunity to say we appreciate you, we recognize the contribution. We are very proud of you as our alumnus. And I would like to request the chair of council to give you a certificate that endorses that we are actually proud of you. Yes. We also have some souvenirs, just to remind you of your alma mater, Your Excellency. May I request the Chair of Council also to appreciate our keynote speaker by giving you also a certificate. If you could kindly come up. And we wish also to recognize and appreciate our Honorable Minister of State. Who is very passionate about Makerere and always defends us when we are being harassed in the parliament. He stands in a... Thank you very much, Honorable Muyengo.
Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor, Professor Barnabas Nawangwe. We can't I wish to recognize the arrival of the Honorable Minister, State for Culture, Honorable Mutuza. Her Excellency, we won't miss a chance of a Kodak moment. We will request that we step out for just 5 minutes for a photo shoot, or maybe we could do it here because of time. So I'll request the Chair Council and your Vice to take the first picture. It's a photo moment. As they are, okay. This time. And as they take the photo, the keynote speaker and your dear wife get ready to get on the photo moment. Just join as then we would request the Vice Chancellors to be able to join the picture as well.
Okay.
Vice Chancellors here present, kindly join the picture. The Vice Chancellor, if you're a Vice Chancellor, kindly join the picture. And today's panelists also get this moment and join the picture. And these are none other than Dr. Dorothy Chisakar, Dr. James Magara, Dr. John Chitaimbwa, and Dr. Omar Kakumba. This is a historical photo. Kindly, everybody with the katochi, make sure you get this picture. And colleagues, I waited for this moment when Her Excellency is in the room for me to introduce myself. And my name is Goreti Nawanoga, Principal, College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences. Yes, now can we do the anthems? Can we all rise for the anthems?
We build for the future, the great Makerere. Great, great and mighty, the walls around thee. Great, great and mighty, the gates beside thee. Great, great and mighty, the walls around thee. Great, great and mighty, the gates beside thee. From east and west, from north and south, all voices singing, arise, Makerere. Rise up and rise, high up and high, all voices singing, arise, Makerere. Makerere, Makerere, we build for the future, the great Makerere. Great, great and mighty, the walls around thee. Great, great and mighty, the gates beside thee. Great, great and mighty, the walls around thee. Great, great and mighty, the gates beside thee. Mungu taomba uilinde Jumuiya Afrika Mashariki, tuwezeshe kuishi kwa amani, tutimize na malengo yetu. Jumuiya yetu sote tuilinde, tuajibike, tuimarike. Umoja wetu ni nguzo yetu, idumu jumuiya yetu. O Uganda, may God uphold thee. We lay our future in thine hand. United, free for liberty, together we'll always stand. O Uganda, the land of freedom, our love and labor we give, and with neighbors all at our country's calling, peace and friendship we live. O Uganda, the land that feeds us by sun and fertile soils grown. For our own dear land, we shall always stand the pile of Africa's crown.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you so much. I believe we want to have a 5 minutes stretch, and we reconvene for the panel discussion immediately. All the people who were on the stage, kindly follow Her Excellency at the entrance. Everyone who was in the photo shoot, kindly follow Her Excellency right at the staircase outside. Take 5 minutes to stretch, and we reconvene for the panel discussion. There will be a brief photo moment for Her Excellency and those who were in the photo outside at the staircase. We reconvene in 5 minutes. And may the Deputy Chairperson, National Planning Authority, wherever you are, kindly step up. Colleagues, don't go away. The icing on the cake is about to start. Can we reconvene? Can we reconvene for the icing on the cake?
Say, check 1, 2.
Colleagues, can we take our seats? Can we kindly take our seats? Colleagues, can we take our seats? Can we take our seats? May we take our seats? For those who are still outside, the cake is ready. For those who are still outside, the cake is ready. Kindly return to your seats. Colleagues, welcome back for the crown session and for the icing on the cake. We've spent the better half of the morning baking the cake, and now we want to ice the cake. And for that, we are now rolling into the panel discussion. And the panel discussion is going to relate to how a universities contributing to Uganda's development agenda. And allow me introduce to you the Deputy Chairperson of National Planning Authority, Professor Sam Obwayo Kinyera. Kindly step up. Kindly step up and take the very first seat. Yes, they're going to be enough. Take them there. Sorry. Okay,
Now that Professor Sam Obwayo is up on the stage, may we have Professor Umar Kakumba, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic Affairs, Makerere University, to step up. That is Professor Umar Kakumba. Join me to welcome Professor Joy Constancy Kwesiga up on the stage. Also join me to welcome Dr. John Chitaimbwa, DVC Academic Affairs, UCU. And also join me to welcome Miss Dorothy Chisaka, Executive Director, Kampala Capital City Authority. Last but not least, join me to welcome Dr. James Magara, Strategic Leadership. Apologies, one more chair is coming because we need everyone up on the stage. And as soon as the 6th chair is up on the stage, I will hand over the session to Professor Sam Obwayo Kinyera. Yes, the chair is up. Dr. James Magara, kindly step up. And Professor Sam Obwayo, the floor is yours.
It is on. Our chief guest, Her Excellency, the Vice President of the Republic of Uganda, the Honorable Minister of State for Higher Education, Dr. John Muyingo, the Chairperson and Deputy Chair of the University Council of Makerere, and all other chairpersons of other universities, the Vice Chancellor of Makerere University, Vice Chancellors of other universities present, distinguished dignitaries, panelists, and participants. Good morning. Is it morning or afternoon? Well, whatever it is, good morning, good afternoon. I want to welcome you to this very important panel discussion on the role of universities and institutions of higher learning in national transformation. I'm Professor Obwayo Kinyera Sam, not Obwayo, as was being announced. Obwayo Kinyera Sam. I'm the Deputy Chairperson of National Planning Authority. I'm here to moderate a panel discussion on how universities have contributed to and continue to contribute to shaping national development. These themes arise out of the realization that the universities and higher institutions of learning may play crucial roles in national transformation by preparing professionals, conducting research, and engaging communities, and promoting financial sustainability and efficiency. These roles can contribute to national development by creating a pool of highly qualified professionals, fostering innovations and breakthroughs, improving the well-being of citizens, and building resilience and adaptability. However, the extent to which the universities and higher institutions of learning are doing this may not be very clear to the various stakeholders.